What's up, everybody? True Seeker here. The CIA has been one of the world's biggest illegal drug trafficking organizations in the world for decades, a leading American analyst has warned. The Central Intelligence Agency has involved itself in drug trafficking since the spy agency was formed in 1947, journalist and political analyst Stephen Lanman claims. Press TV reports it has billions of dollars in its budgets already through the conducting mischief on a worldwide basis, and it gets more money by trafficking drugs, selling to people who harm themselves egregiously by using this stuff, Lindman said. Juan Pablo Escobar, the son of Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, a Colombian drug lord who was one of the wealthiest criminals in history, says his father worked for the CIA. In a new book, Pablo Escobar and Fragnetti, Escobar explains his father worked for the CIA selling cocaine to finance the U.S. fight against communism in Central America. What the CIA was doing was buying the controls to get the drugs into their country and getting a wonderful deal, he says. He did not make the money alone, but with U.S. agencies that allowed him access to this money. He had direct relations with the CIA, says Escobar, who lives under the pseudonym Juan Sebastian Marroquin. My father had an active participation with the American CIA, he said in a recent interview. The CIA's alleged role in trafficking cocaine into the United States was revealed in 1996 in a controversial investigation series Dark Alliance by journalist Gary Webb for the San Jose Mercury News. The investigation exposed ties between the CIA, Nicaraguan Contra rebels, and the crack epidemic that ravaged black communities in the U.S. from the late 1980s until the early 1990s. The investigation sparked massive protests and congressional hearings, as well as criticism from the mainstream U.S. media to discredit Webb's reporting.
Watching the anger between police and the communities they patrol bubble over in places like Ferguson, Missouri, has many asking, how did it come to this? To get to the bottom of one common theory, you've got to go back to the Cold War of the 1980s. The Iran-Contra scandal was brewing and would eventually enrage the American public. The United States government had funneled $18 million from a secret $30 million arms deal with Iran into the Nicaraguan Contra-Revolutionary Group in an attempt to depose the socialist Sandinista government. The ensuing investigation unveiled something else unexpected.
Many documents were released from the Iran-Contra era that showed that the CIA was deeply involved in drug smuggling all over the United States and throughout Central and South America. I was being groomed to be in a position where I could say yay or nay to search warrants. And that's when it became clear to me that the Central Intelligence Agency was actively protecting certain large drug shipments, and that's when I drew the line and I said I wouldn't compromise my honor.
Ricky Ross, known as Freeway Ricky Ross, from South Central Los Angeles, imported Nicaraguan crack cocaine in the 80s to a drug-hungry public, pushing U.S. dollars to the cash-hungry Contras. As cocaine dealing and use spread through the American black community, drugs got cheaper and guns used to protect the loot got bigger. President Reagan's war on drugs saw heavy sentencing soar.
So once you look at this here, then it's easy for you to see that they didn't mind sacrificing a particular sector of America.
On the back of this, policing has transformed.
I think one of the things that's been really critical is that law enforcement, because of the drug war, because it's not really a war on drugs, it's a war on people, and because of the overemphasis on military-style tactics, is it creates incidents where we no longer work in collaboration with our constituents. We're no longer peace officers, which is what our statutory authority is when we're hired to be police officers. We actually just mindlessly police people. And Ferguson is part of pushing back against that mindlessly policing people.
It's what she calls mission creep, brought on by the war on drugs, then the war on terror. Now local police inherit used military equipment like tanks. Law enforcement lobbies can financially back political candidates who condone heavy tactics And what do you get? A widely expanded power base used against a certain sector of the population. Freeway Ricky Ross served 20 years for his role in selling drugs and is now a public spokesman against drug use and how we've dealt with it as a nation.
We should have clarification on exactly what we're trying to accomplish. You can't incarcerate your way out of drug use.
California voters appear to agree. In November 2014, they voted to defelonize drug offenses. It's the first state in the nation to do so. But it's just the tip of the iceberg in fighting a new war, one between police and the people. And this story is just one theory and how it all began.
See, a lot of people, they don't ever question the fact of where cocaine or opium or any of the opiate pills ever really actually come from. People never really question that fact. They just know it's there. They know heroin is available. They know cocaine is available. But the sad part is there's more of that available than there is marijuana. And the even sadder part to that is the first two drugs I said are imported here to the United States, not even grown here. They're not even made here. The Middle East has been known to grow opium for a very long time, and we have soldiers actually over there that took over a lot of the opium fields, and now all that production that's coming from there goes to our big pharma and everything else. But there's also side trade deals going on. I mean, think about it, everybody. How do you think all this stuff gets on the streets to begin with? It's literally being shipped and flown here and everything, all the way from another country, and there's more easier access to this stuff than there is weed. There's a big issue going on right here. I mean, this is definitely being peddled by government. That's the only reason why it's even accessible. It wouldn't be on the streets if the government wasn't bringing it here. And that's 100% true fact. I mean, there's so many case after case after case of old CIA informants or CIA agents or people that actually are Hollywood celebrities and everything else that actually helped bring stuff across the border on these planes. And there's just a lot of ties in this. The CIA is just literally the most dirtiest entity of our country, and they do all the dirty work. They 100% do all the dirty work without anybody else's approval or supervision. And that's the sad part. Just think of how much of your tax dollars are spent on their programs on a daily basis, and you don't even know what they do. This is what's been going on for years. This is exactly how all these drugs get to the streets here, is these people themselves. The government, the same one that's arresting everybody for using them and selling them, is the same ones that's putting it on the streets to begin with. It's funny because they created this whole entire circle system here. They import the drugs, and then they create the war on drugs. Just so they make it look like they're actually trying to help. They're trying to solve the problem, yet they're not cutting the head off the snake. They're the ones bringing the drugs in to begin with. The war on drugs is a made-up sham. It's just a way for them to profit off the citizens and arrest everybody and pretty much make you guys all slaves. You're all become the slaves to the system, especially if you use any of these actual narcotics. I mean, why? I mean, I don't understand why anybody would use narcotics when you got weed, but still, it's just a shame that this stuff even exists still to this day. You can still see people slinging heroin, crack, and everything else. This is all stuff that started from the 80s, and it's just been exploding. I mean, come on now. You'd figure by now it'd be all cleaned up. This is the major distraction right here. This is the reason why cannabis is actually illegal, is because everybody's representation of drugs just groups everything all together with this stuff. And they're the ones bringing it here to begin with. I wonder why. There's so many stories out there about George Bush and the CIA. You need to look those things up because, I mean, there's too much to cover right now. But definitely look into those. Just look up George Bush, CIA, drug trafficking. Just use those key phrases. I'm pretty sure you'll find a lot of different things about it. And just think, he was our president. That's the even crazier part.